Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Jay the One-Eye Gamer video. In today's video, we're going to be going over the brand new information that dropped for Stranger Than Heaven, courtesy of that Xbox special event for the game. And there is a lot because it's a doozy. We got a lot of great new information, and I'm probably going to cut this video up into sections. I'm going to put some timestamps down in the description like I've done with other videos, so that way you guys can go to whatever specific section you want to go to. But there really is a lot of information that I want to talk about in this game. So without further ado, let's jump into the first section, and that's going to be the story. Hey everyone, so for the story section, I'm going to keep it a little brief only because we didn't get a whole lot of brand new information on the story. We do know obviously that it's taking place between 5 different eras, 5 different cities, that being from 1915 all the way to 1965, and we do know that we are following Makoto Daito's entire life within that time frame. Now they did talk about how Makoto does end up in Japan, but I feel like that's more prevalent to him as his character, so I'm going to save that information for when we get to the character section of the video. But basically the other information we got on the story is at the beginning of the new trailer that they dropped, and I've been using as B-roll footage hopefully, they talk about the Tojo clan within like probably the first couple seconds of the trailer. Now if you guys don't know what the Tojo clan is, and I'm no expert on this myself, it is a very big and powerful organization, an important organization in the whole Yakuza franchise. I believe Kiryu, Ichiban, and a couple of the other main characters are tied to it in some way or form in the entire universe, and I know that the clan, I believe, is disbanded by the end of Like a Dragon, but I do know that that being brought up does definitely make this fit into the world of Yakuza, and the fact that it seems like they're saying that Makoto might be the very first patriarch of the family is very interesting. Now I don't know any of this, is all speculation on my end, and like I said, I do not have a huge wealth of knowledge with the whole Yakuza franchise. I've only ever played one, that being Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I loved every second of it, and I am playing Infinite Wealth, which I'm loving also, and I also did pick up Yakuza 0 Director's Cut and Yakuza 1 2 Kimawami for my PlayStation 5, so I am interested in learning more about this universe and the story. But essentially what everyone seems to be taking online, which I think is also true, is this seems to be a prequel to the entire Yakuza franchise / world as a whole, because if Makoto is tied to the Tojo clan and it sounds like he is going to be the one making it, we can assume then that this is going to be the prelude to everything that happens going forward in the Yakuza franchise, which is very interesting. So I would assume timeline wise it would probably go Stranger Than Heaven, then probably Yakuza 0, and then go on from there, but that's just me speculating on it. But it is pretty cool that it sounds like this is going to be a kind of jumping on point for people who want to get into the Yakuza franchise, who are a little intimidated by all the lore building, and give you a fresh perspective on like this massive organization that played a pivotal role in the Yakuza franchise. You're going to see its creation, and I think that's going to be a very interesting story, because from my knowledge I don't think they've ever gone into full detail about how the Tojo clan was actually founded. I think it's just been established that it's been around for a long time, so I find that very interesting. And again, I could be completely wrong on all that, but other than that, I'm very excited about this, and if this is the prequel that we all think it is, I think it's a fantastic idea. It's just a good way, I think, to get people excited to get into the Yakuza franchise, or the Yakuza world as it is as a whole. But let's move on to the character section now, which we have some really juicy information to go over. So what's really cool about this section is we were actually shown some of the major cast members that are going to be in Stranger Than Heaven, and these are characters who are going to affect Makoto Daito in a very profound way. But during the live stream, they only kind of focused on 4 characters besides Mako himself, so we're going to look at them a little more in depth. But the trailer is going to be up so you can see the rest of the cast, which is filled with some star-studded characters, by the way. But first, let's talk about the man himself, the main character, Makoto Daito. So Makoto himself is of mixed heritage. He had an American father and a Japanese mother, and they would globetrot around the world for a little bit until settling down in California. Now, unfortunately, Makoto's father died at a young age, leaving him and his mother alone, and that unfortunately leaves them open to targets of racism and bigotry as well, to the point that poor Makoto's mother dies shortly after, and the boy is forced to be on the run. Now, we don't know a whole lot about his life from that incident until he shows up in 1915, where the story takes place, but we do know at that time he is jumping onto a smuggler's boat in order to make his way over to Japan, where he believes he can start over in a better environment. Now, he does make his way to Japan, obviously we know that in the story, but unfortunately when Makoto actually does end up in Japan, he is subjugated to the same basic ridicule and isolation that he felt in America. And the reason for that is because he doesn't speak Japanese very well, and it's pretty hard for him to adapt to the Japanese culture as well, as opposed to what he was doing in America. So those are some key factors about Makoto that happened, but we do know that he has a strong will and determination, so he doesn't let that stop him, and he is determined to carve out a place for himself in Japan, even if Japan itself isn't exactly inviting to him. But something else we know about Makoto is that he loves to sing, and that helps him connect with others as well, and that also leads him into his one profession, which is a showman later in life, so he can set up shows and promote other people, and he has a good ear for music, and both of those mechanics come into play later in the video, which I'll go over more in detail. But he's also a good fighter as well, very stubborn, good hand-to-hand combat, what you would kind of expect from a main main character. And I'll go over more of the combat in the combat section as well, because there was a lot to dissect from that. That's pretty much Makoto in a nutshell. A man who has clearly been beaten down so hard but refuses to stay down and is just trying to find somewhere where he can belong. Now, the next character we're going to talk about is a very interesting character as well that was revealed during the event itself, and that is Yu Shinjo. And Yu is considered Makoto's best friend but also best rival as well. And he's very different from Makoto. He's more intelligent, more ambitious, more sharp, more cunning, whereas Makoto is usually considered like a sledgehammer. You would think of Yu as more of like a knife. Like Makoto's going to go in there, he's going to rough you up, he's going to get it done in a very brutal fashion, where Yu is going to go in with a pretty much surgeon's precision to do what he needs to do. And Yu basically shares the same ambition as Makoto, and that is carving out a place for himself in Japan, whether Japan wants him to or not. So he seems to be as driven as Makoto, but I think his will be more on the, I don't want to say sinister side, but it seems that he is more willing to do what has to be done to get his dreams to come true. So I'm very curious to see how these two are going to interact with each other throughout the years, and I wonder if Yu is also going to be involved in the creation of the Tojo clan, or if that's solely going to be a Makoto thing. But either way, Yu Shinjo sounds like a very interesting character, and I can't wait to find out more about this guy when the game releases. And now we come to the man that everyone was waiting for, that being Snoop Dogg himself. And no, he's not going to be called Snoop Dogg in the game. He plays a character named Orpheus, who is the smuggler that both Makoto and Yu end up on his boat, and he takes them to Japan. Now, what's interesting about Orpheus is that he seems to already have connections in Japan. We don't know if Snoop Dogg's actually going to be saying some things in Japanese as well, or if he's going to use Makoto as like a translator, but he does take Makoto under his wing to show him the ropes, so that is where Makoto at least gets his start in the story. And then Orpheus is also the one that wants Makoto to hone his musical talents as well, because I believe he thinks that'll help him also in Japan and make him some money as well, outside of his regular hustle of helping him with his smuggling operations. But that's Orpheus in a nutshell. He seemed very interesting. It is pretty cool that Snoop's going to be in the game and we finally know who he's going to be playing. I'm pretty curious to see if he's going to show up past the 1915 era or if that's only the time he shows up. And I'm also curious how much of an impact he's going to have on Makoto's life as well. But these are all questions we'll find out later on, and obviously when the game releases. The next character they talk about is a character named Takeshi, and he shows up in 1929 when Makoto is actually working for the Yakuza family in Hiroshima. Now, what makes Takeshi very interesting is the fact that he loves to sing and play the piano, pretty much the same as Makoto, but he doesn't let the other Yakuza members find out about that because apparently that's not viewed as Yakuza-ish for them. But he does respect Makoto a lot, obviously calling him Aniki as well, and he seems to follow him throughout his entire life after that point, because we do see him at the beginning of the new trailer they do when Makoto is talking about the Tojo clan. He's one of the characters that encourages him to make his own family, and I also believe he will play a big role when it comes to the showman side of it as well. And I could see him actually being there with Makoto up until the end in 1965, because he apparently admires Makoto that much. That's all the information we have on Takeshi at the moment, but I'm very curious to see how his story unfolds walking the same path as Makoto, which I think is going to be very interesting. And now we come to the last character that they talked about in the special event, and that being Susie Day, a singer that meets Makoto and Yu in 1951 at Atami, and her goal is to sing on the largest stage in Atami as well. And they also say that her life forever gets changed when she meets both of the characters. And they also talk about how they're trying to explore that the entertainment side was just as cutthroat and ruthless as the underbelly of Japan as well. So I'm very curious to see how big her story is going to be in the 1951 era and how much of an impact that might leave on Makoto and Yu going forward, because obviously after this they go into 1965, which is technically the end chapter of the game. So I'm very curious to see what kind of mark she will leave on these two during her time together. But that pretty much does it for all the characters that we got more in depth on. There are other characters that showed up in the cast trailer as well. Hopefully you're seeing them in the B-roll footage. And what's really interesting about this is the fact that there's not going to be a language option this time around. I know in some of the Yakuza games, if there's an English dub, you can choose between the English or the Japanese, but they're really touting that this is actually going to be a bilingual game, because most of the actors they're using are bilingual, so they can speak both English and Japanese as well to a certain extent. So I find that very interesting, and I'm assuming that's going to be a lot more immersive. And also, like I said in the Makoto section, he doesn't speak Japanese well at the beginning, so he tends to use a lot more English, but then we get to see, hopefully as the time goes on, that he gets better at speaking Japanese to the point where hopefully he can speak both Japanese and English pretty fluently and intermittently between each other. But I just think it's very interesting that we're getting a bilingual cast at this point instead of having to choose between an English or a Japanese dub. I find this very interesting, and I wonder if more games will do this, or if RGG will do this a little more after Stranger Than Heaven. But either way, I'm very excited to learn more about these characters, especially the ones we didn't go in depth with. So hopefully as more information comes on, we get to learn more about these characters and see how they interact with Makoto and how that that affects his life going forward. But that's pretty much going to do it for this section. The next section we're going to talk about is the big musical influence that this game is taking inspiration from, and it is pretty crucial to the gameplay itself. So like I said at the end of the last section, Stranger Than Heaven has a big musical focus, and we're not just talking about like OST and all that stuff, we're actually talking about gameplay. Because like we said with Makoto, he has a knack for singing, but he also has a knack for memorizing sounds. So basically in the gameplay, what you're going to do is you can walk around town and you can have him listen to ordinary day sounds like a dog barking and a little old lady sweeping, the sound of a locomotive engine going by, or even stopping in mid-combat to hear the sounds of an enemy swinging their weapon or hitting something. And what he does is when he hears that, he can memorize it and then take that to someone to help make his own original songs, which I find crazy, and it's very interesting as well. And another thing that we know about the music is that the original song that they composed for Stranger Than Heaven, called Stranger Than Heaven I think, was actually worked on in conjunction with a bunch of artists. So the voice actress who does Susie Day's voice, the voice actor who does Takeshi's voice, I believe another singer called Ado, and Snoop Dogg himself all came together to collab on this song. I can't really do it justice. I don't know if I can play it without getting copyright struck, but guys, my highest recommendation is check out the newest trailer, which I think is called Cast Reveal Trailer. The song plays in its entirety throughout the entire trailer, and it just heightens the trailer even more. It is such a good song. Like, I couldn't do it justice even if I tried. I highly recommend you watch that trailer after this video and you let me know what you think of the song. But let it be known that the song is so good that after it was done, like the stream, people were clamoring for Sega and are still clamoring for Sega to put that song on either iTunes, Spotify, or some other music service so they can actually listen to it, because it was just that good, guys. And the fact that there's going to be such a big musical focus in this action game is pretty crazy to me, and I think is also a breath of fresh air, because you don't really see a lot of this emphasized in an action game. It's primarily just, you know, focused on the story and the combat, and obviously the soundtrack always enhances that, but to actually get further involved with the musical aspects of it, and of course being a showman as well that Makoto is, and basically what he does is his job is to bring a bunch of musicians and singers together to form a band and start an actual performance, and you actually run it. So you're the one who's like putting up the posters, you're the one who's recruiting the characters, you're the one who's setting up the band, like who's going to play the bass, who's going to be the percussion, who's going to be the singer, and you actually get to show up at the concerts to see how that does. And I think that's such an amazing thing, and definitely plays to Makoto as his love for music. Highly recommend you guys watch the trailer. It is a very good song. I think the soundtrack for this game is going to be truly amazing, like up there with some of the best in my personal opinion, because some of the things we've heard sound absolutely amazing. And now we come to the section that I think everyone is looking forward to, and that is the combat. So how is Stranger Than Heaven's combat going to go? Well, it's going to be a little different from your normal action style. So in most action games, you're using the face buttons. So like, you know, square, triangle, circle, X, using PlayStation as an example. But in Stranger Than Heaven, you're actually going to be using the bumpers and the triggers for your attacks, because they're touting that they want you to be able to control Makoto's right side and left side independently of each other, which had me a little concerned when I heard about that. I was like, okay, so we're talking like Tekken, but instead of using the face buttons, we're just using the bumpers and the triggers. I was a little skeptical when I saw the combat, but the more I've watched it, the more I've come around to it, because it does seem very interesting. So what they're touting is that you're going to be independent of each other's sides. So say if you want to block with your right hand, but then you want to give a left counter hook, you can do that. Or if you want to hold someone with your right hand while like maybe attacking someone with your left hand, or even bringing them together and smashing their faces together, you can do that. And they've also talked about how if you wanted to do like a 3-hit combo, if you hold down the attack buttons, so whether that's like the right bumper, left trigger, and all that, to either do like, you know, a powerful punch or a powerful kick, you're going to have the options to do that to switch up the combat varies. And it seems like you're going to be able to be very creative with the style as well. They've also talked about how you're going to be able to tackle your enemies as well, and that's by pushing in both the left and the right bumper at the same time to tackle the enemy. So you can either tackle them in the wall, or footage if I can find it, you're actually going to see that Makoto jumps on this guy and they actually tumble down the stairs where he lands, and he's able to mount the guy and leaves him open to retaliation. It's very interesting, the combat system. I think it's going to take a while to get used to. I think there's some real potential in there. And another thing that they also talked about with the combat system is that you're going to be able to use weapons as well. So you have like dual-handed weapons like we see with the mallet. You're going to have a single-handed weapon like you have with a knife. You're also going to have, I think, like katanas. They didn't really go into detail about all the weapons you're going to have, but they did make it very clear that they are going to be a vital part of the combat system as well. So they are giving you an upgrade path for them. So in the footage I can show you, they take a wooden mallet and then they eventually upgrade that into what looks to be a sledgehammer, and you're able to use that in combat. And the combat looks very visceral, like I said. So maybe if you're using a knife in one hand, you could probably block with your left hand and then stab with your right hand, and then maybe maybe do another left hand punch, or maybe you could block with the weapon in your right hand, attack with your left hand, and then stab with the right hand. And we also don't know if you're even going to be able to dual wield weapons. Like maybe if the katana you wield isn't like a two-handed weapon you have to, maybe you could put like a knife in the right hand, a katana in the left hand, or vice versa, and dual wield it in some way or form. That's just me speculating. And we also don't know if there's firearms, because honestly, if you could do that, you could also put like a one-handed weapon in like your offhand and then have a gun in your right hand. Maybe have that be a very powerful attack, but it requires a little setup for it. It's very interesting in my personal opinion, and the more I think about it, the more I think, okay, there's some potential here. We just have to see more of it. And also I think once we get our hands on the game and actually test out the combat system ourselves, we can find out like how in-depth and creative this can be, because from the trailer and the footage I'm showing you, the combat looks very brutal but also very fast-paced. So I'm very curious about that as well, and honestly I can't wait to try it out, because I've never played an action Yakuza game before. I've only ever played, like I said, Like a Dragon, which is a turn-based RPG. So I'm very curious to see how different this is to when I get around to playing Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, and I'll have a frame of reference to see like, wow, okay, this is really different from a standard Yakuza like combat system. And that's got me really hyped, guys. I know I'm probably rambling a little bit about that, but it's hard to put into words what I saw and what I think the potential could be for this system. Honestly, maybe this could be a future combat system going forward for other titles that RGG Studios will work on besides Stranger Than Heaven, because honestly, it looks really good in my personal opinion, and I think the combat mechanics have a chance to be really in-depth, but it just is a matter of how in-depth they're going to give it to us. We also can see some brutal takedowns as well. I know I'm kind of all over the place right now, I apologize about that, but I'm just very excited for this combat system, and I'm just excited for this game in general, you know? Alright everyone, we're getting close to the end of the video, but before we fully sign off on it, I do have one more bit of information to go over, that being the release window for Stranger Than Heaven. Now, they said that the game is coming out this winter. They didn't specify if it was 2026 or 2027. Personally, I think the game's coming out early 2027. I don't think it's going to come out late 2026. That being said, I love to be proven wrong on these things, so I'm very happy if the game does come out like late December, but I have a strong feeling that it's probably going to be either a January or February title, which I'm okay with because that gives me something to look forward to in the beginning of next year. I did put this game as second as my most anticipated games of 2026, even though I knew that it probably wasn't going to come out this year, but I still stand by that. It is my second most anticipated game of the year next to Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which is my number one coming out this year, but Stranger Than Heaven is clearly my number two for right now. If it comes out in 2027, it will be my number one most anticipated game of at least next year. So I guess a spoiler, if I decide to make a video on that, you guys are going to know what my number one pick for next year will be if this game comes out by then. That's going to do it for me, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching the video. If you made it this far, please sound off in the comments sections. Did you watch the live stream like I did? If you did you enjoy it? If you didn't, have you watched the brand new trailer? If you haven't, are you going to? Because again, I strongly recommend that you watch that brand new trailer and listen to that amazing song that they made for the game. I can't do it justice, guys. It really sounds amazing, and the trailer itself is so well done. I know I'm very much gushing about this game, but I can't help it, guys. Like, I've been so interested in this game since before I stopped doing YouTube and I took my little break, and it was one of the first few videos I came back talking about this game and what I hope to see from it. And now that we're actually getting all this information, it looks amazing, and you can tell this is a very passionate project from these developers, because there's so much passion and energy and polish just being put into this game that we're seeing. Again, guys, it looks just amazing. I'm gushing right now, I know, but please let me know how you feel about Stranger Than Heaven. Did this make you decide like, maybe this isn't for me, or did this go like, yeah, I'm really locked in for this? And also, how do you feel about that this is officially part of the Yakuza world and that it might actually be a prequel to the whole Yakuza franchise, which I think is amazing in my own personal opinion. I'm rambling because I just love talking about games with you guys. I really do, and I really do appreciate anyone who watched the Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave video I made. I had no idea I would get that many views, and I'm very thankful for that. And I know this is not the video to do it on, but I just want to say I'm very thankful and happy that you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. And I hope this video has gotten you a little hyped about Stranger Than Heaven. I hope it also got you interested enough to check out the game yourself on your own personal time, because that's the whole point of me doing these videos, is I just want to talk about these games that I'm very interested in and then pass that information on to you guys and see if this is something that you would like to see as well, or even keep your tabs on. That's going to do it for me, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching the video. If you managed to make it this far, I want you all to have a great day. I want you all to be safe out there, and remember, let's rock.